King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts.
As I begin episode 167 here of the Broadcasters Podcast, I'm going to be running without much of a script tonight, without a whole lot of stories to go and bring up, because this is going to be one of those radio rants. Because you know that I really enjoy doing this. The essential reason of doing the Broadcasters Podcast when I first started this show back in 2018, and I've been doing this since January 2018. And what I know about this show that I've done thus far is that I always wanted to do a talk about radio initially. When I started the program, started to call it Creative Not Corporate. But then I wanted to incorporate other things that I did. So back in 2012, when I first started experimenting on which shows I wanted to do for myself, when I decided to do my own podcasts outside of what I've been doing for the last 6 years. At that point, I was saying to myself, well, I want to see what I do better with, because I had a whole lot of things to talk about. But again, what am I going to do best with? And I think what I wanted to do first, I did 3 test shows when I did that. And I did one that was on wrestling. And that was the one that I knew I was the best adept at that time, to be able to go and do a weekly program and do it consistently. So for me, I would do that show, the Wrestling is Real podcast. I started doing that. I just celebrated my 600th podcast of that program just yesterday when I did it. And then at the same time, I decided to do 2 other episodes. One that was just a water cooler show, and I did it with somebody else. And then I did one on the media. And the media was just really just a full run-up of what I was doing with myself and just my interest in the radio industry. It was a radio rant. Because even at that time, we know that radio has gone in such a direction, it's sad. And I can't help but continue to berate this radio industry to turn itself around. And why they did not take a better advantage of the pandemic, they didn't. Now, we already know what's going on. When you look at the landscape of radio, so in the sports radio end, there's a lot of changes where people have been going on. Podcasting's different. ESPN Radio has been going through a lot of things, a lot of backtracking, a lot of budget cuts, things like that. Dan Le Batard leaving ESPN Radio in general, now going to work on his own project. So sports radio now greatly affected, and also the rest of the ESPN Radio lineup. And I don't see anybody doing anything with the other sports radio stations of national syndicators that are doing anything to really make up the slack. But again, the pandemic has also hurt that as well. I mean, there's nobody really standing out after Dan Le Batard that really makes a difference. So you got sports radio that is hurting greatly on the AM side, and some on FM, because we know either simulcasts or it is featured on FM radio. What else? Talk radio. It's hurting right now. And the reason why is because Rush Limbaugh is no longer there. Howard Stern long left to satellite radio. What is left? There is nobody in talk radio right now that can help to push up and elevate the rest of the industry like 2 of those type of people, like a Rush or a Howard Stern. Howard Stern going first, Rush after that, because Howard came first. And you ask yourself, who else is there that really stands out nationally from radio that really is a go-to? I mean, really, that people really recognize. I guess the next best thing would be the Breakfast Club. That's it. Like, really, I don't look at Elvis Duran. I don't look at Bobby Bones. I don't look at some of the other top stars of radio that really do stand out. Again, they're just getting leveraged by certain deals that they have. Bobby Bones going to American Idol, things like that. But otherwise, what else do they have? And American Idol kind of being attached to iHeartRadio, that's what's going on there. So overall, radio doesn't have anything to live off of. It's been living off of any legacy that might have. But it is such an antiquated medium or media now that we have. And then the part where they could do something to retain a younger audience, they don't do here in America. Now, I'm going to tell you this. Radio actually works in other markets. Now, an app that I was tapped into. I forgot who I read that talked about it. I think it was Lance Venta over at Radio Insight, or was somebody else that talked about it. Maybe Fred Jacobs. So they mentioned the point about the app called Radio Garden, which I never really paid attention to, and I heard about vaguely, but then they talked about they did a new update, and they really fixed it up. When you go to that app, you download it. There's an ad version, which has a few ads in it, or you pay $3 and you pay for the premium version so you don't have any ads. You get rid of the ads. That's the one I have. You go ahead and look on different dots on the map of the world, all over the world. And you can find stations all over the world that you want to listen to. And the effort for shows to do something live, to do something that's current, that plays music that is up to date, that is viral, that matches up with today, there's a lot of that. There are quite a few stations I can find that are commercial free, or there are very few commercials, and that they provide the newest music out there. You know, they actually play the music that's going on right now as if it would be the way it was done in America years ago. Now, as a person that's been a real super radio fan, I'm a radiophile at heart. I'm the kind of guy that will go and listen to old air checks of radio stations, right? This is where I'll listen to a recording of a radio station from years ago. It could be 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I'll listen to how the disc jockeys or the DJs or the on-air talent, as we call it today, how they sounded, the kind of jokes, the entertainment they would do within 10, 20, 30 seconds of time, which is an art to be able to do. Okay? My work in radio, what I've done in the 25 years I've been on the air on and off, what I've been able to do when I do podcasting, okay, some people do podcasting and they feel like they need to go and do extra prep. They need to do a whole lot of work to go ahead and be able to go and talk on the microphone. They need so much resources, so much structure in order to be able to do a show, to be able to go and fill 30 minutes. Now, if I wanted to, I could just fill on for hours and hours, but I know for my radio training, I only want to talk about what's important. I only want to go and talk about what is imperative to the discussion I want to have, because I don't want to waste your time. And also, I'm trying not to talk to the entire base of listeners like Arthur Godfrey or through Dick Clark would say, you know, you're talking to one person at a time. So you don't get nervous, you don't get worried. And I'll tell you what, when I do this show, I feel like I'm talking to a best friend. You on the other side of this microphone, I'm talking to you. Now, this show doesn't pull the largest numbers in the world. I know that. This is a niche program. This is an industry program for myself that I enjoy doing because this is a chance for me to go ahead and rant about certain things in the media that I want to talk about from a high-end industry level, kind of a business-to-business level. But I'm talking to content creators. So for radio, I respect radio in the fact that this is the medium where, I've said it many times, some of the greatest talent that has ever come in to MC or host or do anything, a multi-versatile personality that's able to go ahead and do multiple things. That is something you learn in radio. When you're able to go ahead and talk off the cuff, when you're able to go ahead and work on the fly, when you're able to go ahead and entertain an audience without having to work hard. Okay? In a lot of cases, comedians do the same thing. They have to do stand-up, and they have to go and get out there, and they are out there and they have to keep the audience entertained, engaged, and worked up. You got to be really good at it. And we've known that radio for many decades, especially with the advent of satellite radio and because of the digital disruption, that, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of talent that came after on radio to really build up from. And also because radio ruined the magic that once was. Deregulation destroyed it. Okay, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 destroyed this business that I loved. But what happened is podcasting is an outreach of radio. This is what radio actually kind of was in a different format. We're just doing on-demand radio, period. But we're also doing radio in the fact that we're not putting in a lot of commercials. We're taking most of those out because people don't want to listen to them. And also because people, you know, the advertisers and the programmers do not do what they used to do to entertain the audience with the advertisements. If you listen to any radio station going back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, into the 80s, how many times did you hear an ad that was a jingle? And a jingle, that means it was a song that was with lyrics that attached to this. Now, you might hear a jingle once in a while for certain commercials these days, but nothing like what you hear now, right? I mean, nobody does the effort to go ahead and create commercials that were standout. I mean, there's so many different people. Like Coke and Pepsi used to do commercials that were incredible to create sing-along jingles. Budweiser, they would do that. And there were always these other commercials we would talk about. They did it sing-along jingles because they blended along with the music they were doing, or even the talk radio or whatever else they were doing. You found a way to go and keep people intrigued with it. And you know what? That actually happens in other markets. So on Radio Guard, when I listen to that app, there are stations I've been picking up right now that really are fascinating. For me, when it comes to hit music, when it comes to current music of the day, Europe has it. Europe is all over it. Germany, Netherlands, France, UK. They all have it. All different hit music stations, all playing the music that's playing right now. When it comes to the latest pop, dance, some hip hop, some you might even play, reggaeton or just in different languages, of their own languages. But again, they would also appreciate the American music, the music that's being done in America by American artists. When I listen to some of these European stations, man, you want to listen to a Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Weeknd, Rihanna, pick it. They play them all. And they play a lot of it. So there's an appreciation of music in a different level overseas. If you listen to the radio interviews by certain stations overseas, they're so entertaining, they're so enlightening, they're just so different. I have talked about many times, all you have to do is listen to the countdown shows. Okay? The countdown shows that are provided by other stations in other countries are just so much different. In Europe, in the UK itself, BBC Radio hosts the official chart. Their top 40 of the top 100 songs that are listed on their chart. The comparison is Billboard. And Billboard used to have that. For whatever reason, a lot of corporate reasons would change the way things were as to why. I don't know why there was a disconnect from Billboard out of everything else. But again, it's because of the corporate system controlling what music is being played on radio stations. So when you're listening to classic rock, you are most likely going to hear a playlist of about 250, 300 songs with some album cuts. If you listen to that same station 40 years ago, it was a freeform station where that station and that DJ would be entertaining and enlightening and would just tell stories about maybe being backstage with a band or different events or different music going on, because they would be in touch with the artists. They would have an actual connection to the artists. They would probably interview the artists as well. That would actually happen. Quick reference, the book by Richard Neer on FM. Take a listen to that. Read it. All that great information they talk about there. When it comes to Scott Soul Muni or Tom Donahoe and others that were there. Allison Steele. Just look at the story they talk about of WNEW-FM or WOR-FM in New York, or stations they had in San Francisco, or they had in Chicago, or what have you. They were all over the place. Freeform was what it was. You had different albums that you would listen to different songs from of everybody. It could be soul, it could be jazz, it could be rock, it could be progressive, it could be whatever. But those stations were considered progressive rock stations, and they were very good. And now, to create radio that would be more structured, which is what the modern era of radio had become, the Todd Stores, the Bill Drakes, right? The Lee Abrams, the Mike Josephs, the current, the consultants that created radio of what we have. That was legendary because it was a tight playlist, a great format. The DJ sounded great. The sound was great. And it was compartmentalized because it kept it at a momentum. You were just moving along with the rhythm of the station. And it didn't even matter how bad the music might have been at that time. But again, they did a format that was amazing. And there were some stations that also did the same thing. They would just find a way to go and work with radio, and they would go ahead and go along with the times of how radio was. And if there was a dead time in pop music, then guess what? Other music would replace it. We always had many times where pop music would be the first and foremost format of music genre on a top 40 radio station. But then when there's not that much pop music out there, other music replaced it and came into crossover into the mainstream. The organic mainstream we talk about, not that convoluted, put together mainstream that we're forced to contend with, right? That I've talked about here on the program over previous episodes. So songs would cross over from the mainstream into it. So again, say today, you would have dance songs that would make it into the mainstream, rap songs, R&B songs, and others that would make it into the mainstream. What's happening now is in streaming today, you're getting that. I mean, if you listen to the variety of music that's being made popular by streaming, it's incredible. And that's the whole point. When I look at what's out there and the kind of music that we have now, it is really fascinating. When I look at the variety of the charts right now, and I look at the variety of the charts across the world of what they're doing, it's really, really crazy. And I have a couple of charts that actually, a couple of websites to go through just to look at that kind of stuff. Again, now, what's interesting is say, all right, the Global Hot 100 or the Global 200, they do a good job of really identifying songs from other markets. It could be from Brazil, it could be from Japan, it could be from China, Korea, or the Caribbean, or Europe, or the USA. And that's where the bulk of the music is from. That would become mainstream or popular that could cross over. And you look across and you just say to yourself, wow, it's just really fascinating. And to see what stars become really popular somewhere else and how the promotion, the concerts, everything they're doing right now really builds out so much. It's fascinating. So I look at the charts now, say for Spotify right now. If I look at the global top 200 songs around the world, I just look at those top 10 songs they have right now just at this point. Again, it's variety across the board. Rosé on the Ground, that's one of the Blackpink artists that's gone solo. You have an R&B song with Giveon and Heartbreak Anniversary. Pop song with Justin Bieber, Hold On. Dakiti by Bad Bunny and Jay Cortez, a reggaeton song. Blinding Lights, which is really basically, he is a pop artist, or you could say kind of an R&B artist in the same way. Leave the Door Open, that's just a classic R&B song. Like when you say classic sounding 70s soul song, a very different feel. Astronaut in the Ocean, it's an Australian artist from a song that was from 2019, Mask Wolf. Save Your Tears by the Weeknd, another R&B laden type of song, very lush. Telepatia by Kali Uchis. And Olivia Rodrigo's Driver's License, which is still streaming right now, number one around the world. 31 million streams. Quite a test. Look, if I go farther down the list really quickly, The Business by Tiesto, very big, solid dance song. A rap song with Calling My Phone, Little TJ and Black. Doja Cat and Streets. What's Next by Drake. Bandito by Mike Towers and June. And that's a reggaeton song. Then you got Mood, Without You, Up, Levitating, and La Noche de Anoche. It's identifying different artists, different markets, different diversity as we talk about. That's what's fascinating. But these songs right here, just that top 20 right now, you're not listening to it on the radio. And if you are, you're listening to it on streaming. But your commercial American radio stations, no. You know why? It's because they have been allowed to be in the business of what I call a flea market mentality. So the songs that are the merchandise, the valuable merchandise. We're going to just take the songs that we played on the radio that could have been played on the radio, right? The value of them. Okay, the value on streaming, it's like that's the next new thing. That's the newest thing to have. That's the most expensive thing to buy. The thing that's in right now, you got to have it. You got to wear it. You got to show it off. That's the in style. And when it's not so much in style, it becomes last season's market. Then it goes to a secondary market. And then after that, it goes flea market. So radio now operates on a flea market mentality. They would rather be secondhand music content. They'd rather go and just do secondhand all together for music. They do not want to be the ones that break music. And for whatever reason, Billboard, Bubby, why do you give so much value to airplay on the radio? Maybe that's one thing you do when it comes to airplay for streaming stations. I don't know if that's part of what's counted, but radio airplay is counted mostly by what's going on commercial radio. Of all the 8,000 stations or 7,000 stations that are out there, and the couple of thousand pop stations or top 40 stations that are playing the songs, or R&B or whatnot, but again, they're all playing the songs behind. Now, the record labels, we already know a few weeks ago, I talked about the fact that the promotions departments are cutting out radio divisions. They're not even servicing radio anymore. Radio is secondary, and that's because radio is a flea market mentality. They would rather wait for songs to become popular instead of catching on to them when they are the next big thing. It wasn't that way before. When a song was popular, it would get on the radio. And what you wanted as an artist was a song to get on the radio and chart number one. For example, since the start of the year, I took the example of Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo. Now, that song has been out 10 weeks overall. It is now on the Global 200. I think it's the number one song still. 200 weeks, or to me, the Global 200. It is the number 3 song in the country now on the Billboard Hot 100. But again, the Hot 100 is a little bit different than what the Global is because the song still is very strong worldwide. In America, it got to 8 weeks, and that's it. But then again, what broke the streak for Olivia Rodrigo was Drake. So if you're going to let somebody go and break your streak, Drake coming in, yeah. With an album bomb, sure. Or an EP bomb, yeah. That's what's going to break it. And then because the song came down quite a bit on streaming and sales, and all it has is the radio airplay right now. I mean, it's still strong. It still has some numbers in streaming. But again, the real strength is the radio airplay. It finally became the top song of corporate radio. And how long did it take? 7 weeks. As soon as the song gets off of number one, just because it's an artist they were not familiar with, because they weren't responsible for breaking the artist, because the artist did not have any attachments to iHeartRadio or to other companies or anything like that. Maybe not even was presented out to radio stations, because the radio stations are going to promote an artist. They're not going to take them in the studio and talk to them. They never do that anymore. Radio doesn't allow that because they don't allow the airtime. They don't have the DJs that can actually handle the interviews and do it right. They don't have the talent that could do proper interviews with an artist without doing it kind of hokey, like a Ryan Seacrest does, which is all kumbaya shit. That's what it is. It's what he does. He mails it in on that American Top 40 show. That show, as I continue to talk, I know it's probably passe by now, and it's been passe for 20 years. Because ever since he took the baton, nobody cares about that show. Probably nobody does. But you know what? For whatever reason, that show still is the Sunday morning pinnacle of what you have on every radio station that plays pop music around the world. It's still in like 40 countries. It's all over the place. It's what America's representation of music is around the world. And what do? They are behind all the time. And that's their problem. So I've pulled the American Top 40 list just for the last month, just to look what they were doing. They have a methodology to their madness. They don't even use the media-based charts anymore. They do something else altogether. It's rigged. It is orchestrated. It is contrived. It is shit. Okay? So when I look at what they've done, all right, they will take certain songs from certain artists that they are familiar with or they have an attachment to. Because, they might have worked the Jingle Ball or they might have worked other events for iHeart or for other stations. iHeart obviously being the one that has all the spots, right? Well, what happens is there are certain artists that are already they've gotten a lot of clout among the radio stations for what they've done for them. And for that, we're going to put you up on the radio. Sure, we'll take care of you, right? And then there are certain artists that, of course, they're going to get some kind of a payoff for that'll get them on the chart. So, like, okay, for instance, BTS might have been a group that late last year coming out with Dynamite, and Life Goes On, and their whole album that hit number one, that hit number one singles, and then hit a lot of songs across the board, right? And they did monster when it comes to streaming. What did radio do? Nothing. They gave it a little bit of love. I think American Top 40, I think they put the song Dynamite maybe up into the top 10, and that's about it. Maybe I don't even think it got the top 10. I just think it got a little bit halfway up the chart, and that's it. But they didn't give that song or that artist, that group, any kind of attention like they could have gotten. The level of stardom that they have around the world, just because they're not the ones that did it, because American radio did not break them, then it doesn't matter. But when there's a K-pop girl group like, Blackpink, also in the same vein, putting songs up on the chart, they're not getting played on American radio. You know who they're playing? They're playing Luna, a K-pop group that obviously is working with some other label and doing something where American radio is looking at them as a group that they will play. And if they feel like they need to do something where they need to fill a spot with some music they put out there that will fill a role. Like sometimes dance music is used when necessary. When they want to just, take a trend and just work off of it and really not do much with it. But of course they have their artists that they care about. And if you look at the way the chart is done, you have songs that have been on there 50, 60. Now, that doesn't mean Blinding Lights. Blinding Lights has been on the chart, 60 weeks right now on the Billboard Hot 100. And that song still gets played all over the place. That's an anomaly. But if you listen to if you look at what American Top 40 represents to the whole world, then all their songs are 20, 30, 40 weeks old. They're past their prime. It's like a flea market. Well, we're just going to keep playing these songs until we burn them out. We're going to keep putting these songs up on the table here at the flea market, booth 320, right next to the right next to the circus, right next to the drive-in theater, right next to the whatever, right next to the concession stand. That's what we're treating it. Look, we got all these CDs for you. We got all these CDs we got left over of this artist. We're just gonna keep putting it out there until we sell them out. We're just gonna put them on at a discount because radio feels like that now. When you hear a song on the radio, you already know it's already been played over and over in anybody else's stream. If they listen to Spotify or Pandora, no wonder. The casual music fan that's listening on streaming or watching on YouTube, they're not listening on radio. First of all, they can't stand the damn commercials. To put out, in some cases, 8, 10, 12 minutes of commercials in 2 stop sets is ridiculous. But yet these stations do that. They don't do anything to entertain. They don't do anything to break it up. They don't do anything to do anything. They're just making good. Because here's the other part. How much are they actually making for those ads? Not much. If you look at the stop set on a radio station, like on iHeartRadio, they have some make good ads they have to do because of what is set up by the ad rep firm. A couple of filler spots because they fill spots. They fill the stop set with commercials that they need to just have because they feel like, well, we can sell those spots. That's inventory left to sell. No, instead of shortening the stop set down because you couldn't sell it all, you just keep it as long as it is already and then fill it up with junk. And what do you fill it up with? Progressive commercials, Geico commercials, things like that have already paid the ad rep firm because they're getting paid by cost per measurement, cost per metric. So that's just nickel and diming all these. And then all these stations have to play it so they can get the impressions, get the metrics over, the cost per measurement, so that this company like a Progressive will get their metrics and enough to justify their money they're spending to the national advertiser that doesn't go to the local advertisers. Of course, it's just basically those kind of ads that are just propping up to try to go and cut down on the debt that iHeartRadio still has in their bankruptcy. Post-bankruptcy, $5.6 billion. Right? That's what they got. That said, you look at the charts and what they do, I know I've done this over and over again, but again, this is what they do. And you have songs that are here that continuously, they'll have songs on here that have been on forever, and they've been long out of the mindset of current music for a while. March 6th, their countdown, the song Before You Go, Louis Capaldi. Listen, that song was a good song in 2019. But this song's 55 weeks on, and they're still putting it out there, and they're still playing it on radio. I'm sorry, people are not listening to that song that long. It was a good song, but man, you have overstayed its welcome because it was already out there. If you look at what Spotify has, if I looked at that song, I think it's more than 100 weeks on the chart because it's in the top 200. It's still a song that's going to get streamed, but not to the level that it should be the top 40 songs in the country. No. Surf Mesa Emily, gotta say, like, it was in the top 5. 32 weeks on, and that song is also a song from like 2019. Why they do that? Now they have new songs, and the way they put some songs that they decide to go ahead and launch, their breakout songs, if you will. Well, Tiesto the Business was out that week of March 6th. Zara Larsson and Young Thug talking about love. Zara Larson's an artist they've been always trying to push out through radio with new songs. BB Rexa, it's the same way. Sabrina Carpenter, the same way. These are artists that are not really persona non grata. Persona grata if you listen to them on streaming, because those songs, they come and go, and really they don't get any kind of traction. So they have to rely on radio as the secondary market to try to get them noticed. And does it work? No, because radio doesn't have the kind of level of promotional power or viral ability to trend any songs at all. They just don't. And there are some songs they have that they just don't really push out much and they don't really care for. Like Dakiti has been a top 5 song or number 1 song for a while in the Global 200 and Billboard, and number 1 song in many different markets. Seagal, Lasting Lover with James Arthur. That song was, 30 weeks on the chart in the UK last year. This is a song now that's been on 4 weeks this year. So, yes, I can understand back in the 80s, when we had the British invasion, say in the British invasion of the 60s, or the one in the 80s, where Culture Club or Human League or Duran Duran would have songs that would chart 6 months before in the UK, and it would take 6 months for the songs to get overseas to import so that you can go and do that. But importing doesn't happen anymore. We already have availability to get songs digitally. We don't need to wait for the songs to get to the record stores. Nobody's doing that. If you're doing that, you're not going there to go ahead and, unless you want to buy vinyl because you want to be, it's just a niche that you want. That's a different story. But again, nobody's buying physical units in the record stores anymore. Very little. Very, very little. It's all online and digital. So the excuse of waiting for one market to go ahead and get popular to go to another market doesn't make sense. Now, the whole idea of, the song, if it gets to America, it'll become even a bigger hit. Sure. But you are downplaying and watering down the opportunity of an artist if you don't do that. That's the whole point. But they don't get that. And, of course, they have artists that are part of the lexicon of American music that, the promotion types will go ahead and use and radio will bank on because they're bankable artists that they rely on. That's like, at a flea market, if you put an artist, that's really popular, you could probably sell a couple of their CDs. If it's an artist that everybody knows. But if you don't, then it's like, well, what are we going to do with it? That's how they think. They think of music as, valuable physical units. The consultants, the people at radio now, the radio types that only care about money making, they don't care about programming. They do not spend any money on programming. Case in point, when I worked at iHeartRadio, when it was Clear Channel, you look at the difference between the offices. Go to any radio company right now. If you're able to work in a radio company, this is true. Look at the sales department. Nice new cubicles, new office equipment, new computers. Always have loads of pens, papers, pencils, whatever they want, whatever kind of stationery they need. If they need to go ahead and use any petty cash, they need to go ahead and use anything to kind of invest. They want to go ahead and, cater lunches, things like that. They can do that. What does programming have? None. Programming, when I worked at Clear Channel, they had old office equipment, old file cabinets, old copiers, old computers, old printers, old cubicles, old chairs. And what happened was that some of these stations, and you know this is true, some of the equipment came from the radio stations that got acquired. So some of the equipment that we see is antiquated because it came from another office, from a station that had been around for 20, 30 years. And some of that equipment had been moved over. Like even the headphones they would have for the radio people, for the people that would, the sponsors and advertisers that would come in and buy radio time. If you wanted to use headphones in the station, they actually had old, antiquated 1980s level, heavy, uncomfortable headphones. Something you'd watch Howard Cosell use on Monday Night Football back in the day. Like it was that old and antiquated. Even the equipment, like, you know, they have CD players, they might have tape players, they might have other equipment in there. The only thing that was brand new was the computer server and the computer that ran the automated computers. Otherwise, all the other computers were crap. The boards that ran the programming, those are new. But again, that's a long-term investment. You know, the cabinetry, yeah, that's good. The microphones, those are good. But what else? None. You know why they have those setups with that? Is because the audio equipment has to be good because they have to be able to record commercials off of them. Or if you need the talent to live read, they should be able to do it so that the advertiser's happy. It's not about the listener. It's about the advertiser. And what are you doing good for the advertiser in the first place? When you are smack dabbing them into a lineup of 8-10 commercials in a block, how are they going to even be noticed? Are you doing the right thing by making sure that their commercial stands out and is distinguished from others? No. You have a format on how you line up the commercials, from commercials that are energetic to the ones that are just a simple read over. That's what you do. It's just a formula. You're not even putting any in real intrinsic value in what you're doing for advertising, let alone the music. And well, there was a time where you had music that could be played by the disc jockeys or the on-air talent, and they could assume what's out there. And they could also get feedback from the audience and play songs that they asked for, or have a countdown that would be done that day to get a real-time gauge of what songs people were listening to. And those songs would be part into the playlist based on audience feedback. Audience metered testing. You do it now on a national level and on somewhat of a regional level. And you're doing research, and you're not even doing that good a service. Okay? Because also, you're sampling the music for them. You know, you're not even trying to do anything to put out new music, because then the audience that you're getting for sampling is, you know, it's an outdated audience. You're getting it of radio listeners, not of listeners of music. You know, they always talk about radio. Oh, well, you know, they get 95% of the audience. But remember, I mean, right now, I got a new smart speaker. I got rid of Alexa. Now I got Google. I got a Google smart speaker, a Google Nest Audio. I bought the nice little gray speaker. I'll tell you, I love it. I bought me a new Bluetooth boombox kind of deal so I can use for my outdoor pool. And that thing sounds great. And you know what? I can listen to radio on it. But if I'm going to listen to radio, I don't put it on in my car because it doesn't sound good. But with my Bluetooth devices, my smart speaker, it sounds good. The other thing, the engineers, they're only allowed to be able to do so much to compress and make the audio sound good. And even those guys are not properly paid. They're also doing a thing where they're probably, some of these engineers, you're getting less and less engineers actually operating the stations. And for them, they have to go ahead and handle multiple stations. Jim Leifer, God bless him, that guy was good. And he's still working. And I remember at one point, I think he was working on 18 different stations. Employed by iHeartRadio, but also contracted to do other stations because he was the one guy that did it for all of them. And in some cases, some of the towers for some stations are all in the same place. Over here we have the Eiffel Tower, we call it. And there's like 12 different stations, transmitters up there, transmitting out. And, you know, to have that kind of medium for free content, to make free content and then have an ad-supported model at the worst level of ad support. I mean, at least take the trouble of trying to create some compelling advertising, or at least not try to go and barrage everyone with so many ads to turn them away. But they can help themselves. They don't do that. They don't want to do that. Now, if I look at the way the music is done, again, the flea market mentality of the music. When I look at how songs are done, American Top 40 does the same thing. They'll take some of their songs, about a good half of them, they will then put them on the chart, and they will go up 2 spots up, 3 spots, 1 spot, something like that. Gradually climb up towards the top to where they think is their level, and they bring it back down. Sometimes they'll have a song go up, and they'll go to a certain spot, and they'll just cut it off. It won't be a natural gradual drop from the chart. It'll just be, well, iHeartRadio and the corporate entities that are running all these top 40 radio stations, we're just not going to care about it anymore. When a song's done, it's when we say it's done. It's not when the audience says it's done. It's when they say it's done. Well, this song, we're going to crown this song here because now we're going to give it a chance. So my point is, American Top 40 in the last, 7 weeks, the song by Olivia Rodrigo, Driver's License. I only use this as an example of a song that was just so overwhelmingly popular around the world. And the song went straight up to number 1 and stayed there for 8 weeks in America. 10 weeks in the UK. And this is what you do? And by the way, Olivia Rodrigo's song, she had competition behind her. I mean, in the UK, with the Weatherman song, which is based on a TikTok dance, the Sea Shanty song, that was being held off for, I think, about 8 weeks before it finally hit number 1 this past Friday. It'll probably hit number 1 again. But that's where they are. And that song, worldwide. In Europe, all over the place. But yet, in America, on this Ryan Seacrest Countdown show, which is not based on Media Base, which is kind of trying to be a little more level-headed on some songs because they know that some stations are trying to enterprise. They're trying to be trending. They're trying to incorporate trending music. That's what they're saying now. Trending music, TikTok music, Instagram music, or YouTube music. They're trying to incorporate what is trending, what is popular, what is streaming, trying to incorporate that in. But they can't make it part of their entire playlist. They have to specialize it. They have to do a little song and dance around how the song can be, a song that is on the way up, or it's an ad, which is what they use in the industry, a song that's getting added to their rotation. But it cannot be in regular rotation because their bosses, the entities that run these stations, which are not the programmers, it's the advertisers, it's the management that don't know what they're doing. They don't care. They just let it go where it goes. In a rare case, the way that they have to handle some of their songs, like an Ariana Grande, it gradually goes all the way up to number 1. Justin Bieber will have a song that goes gradually to number 1. Harry Styles, same way. The Weeknd's not even been number 1. Oh, it was for Blinding Lights, but not for Save Your Tears, not for anything else. And so we know there's a bit of a diversity problem on the American Top 40 Countdown chart. Absolutely. We know that. I mean, if you want to talk about the lack of diversity, a lack of representation, that's it. Now, moving along. So, Driver's License started on their chart. Normally, if it's a song from Justin Bieber or Taylor Swift or Ariana Grande, that song would get up to as high as maybe 27. That's usually, for whatever reason, that's like the mark of a new song, a hot new song that hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. That's where it stops. 27. No higher than that. And then it'll start making some gradual changes up. I never saw a song like Driver's License had to go in, the maneuver they had to do to make that song go up. It went from 29 to 14. That never happens. They never put on American Top 40, rarely is there ever a song that rises more than 10 spots up a chart. And it's like the only one that does. There's never like this one song goes gradually all the way down or went all the way up. It's always like a small little move up, small little move down. That's it. Then that song went from what? Let me see here. All right, so March 6th, it got up to number 4. And the week before it was at number 7. Move along to March 13th. Driver's License, after 6 weeks, moved up a spot from 4 to 3. So again, this song had already been on the chart in America for 2 months. 8-week song. They can't even put that song up. They had to have Go Crazy, which was a song also from 2020, or I think it was more like 2019. I think the song released in 2019 and was on for over a year on the Spotify charts and all the other charts around the world. And then 3435, Ariana Grande, they had to put that song because of whatever they have with Ariana Grande. That song has to be a number one song. And it was also after Positions spent some time at number one. So again, that's where it was there. Then you move up March 20th. And that's when the song, after 7 weeks, makes it to number one. And it had already been on the chart everywhere else for 9 weeks. That's what they do. Ridiculous. And that's what they do. We don't know if it's going to stay like that or not. But, you know, do you think people right now, after 10 weeks, American Top 40 is doing the right thing by having a song like that was so popular by just putting it out like their secondary? I mean, again, they stretch out songs 30, 40, 50, 60 weeks because, and that's why, you know, when you listen to these stations, the songs are stale, they're old, they've already been played. They've already had their run. And because they're so long ago, that's what happens. And they just don't care. They'd rather just keep doing this model. But again, this is the same thing that's going on. They're continuing to downsize. They're down to downgrade. They're making cuts. That's what they did during the pandemic. Have they done anything to put resources back in? Have they done anything to help in the programming sense? To change up things? No. And any other market, again, BBC, government owned. They do a better job. And this is why I hope that the change of Global coming in to buy a good bulk, because Global is the competitor, the for-profit competitor against the government-owned BBC when it comes to radio. And Capitol does a great job of doing music. They do their own countdown, but they also have good DJs, good, exciting formatted radio. They do a national format. Do it here. If you do not have the resources to do individual markets, then please go national and stop it. Or sell your stations off and let the local people run it. Because there's a lot, by the way, on the Radio Garden app, a lot of good local-owned stations. Yes. Local-owned, they know what they're doing. They will make attempts. Again, the music costs the same for them. They're spending the same money to Radio Express or ASCAP or BMI. They're spending the money on the royalties. And so what they do is they'll play the songs. They'll play lots of different songs. And they'll do the best to try to make a good format. But again, they also can't play new music because the new music formats are controlled by the larger companies. They control that in each market. And God forbid any station that comes in with top 40 wants to compete with another one. If you look at most of these stations, most of the major markets with 2 top 40 radio stations, again, one is Entercom or Alpha Media and one's owned by iHeart. That's what it is. So there's no chance for these stations to really change, except for some stations I listen to that do have a local market and they're locally owned and they do try to do something different. And at least it's a little bit sounding different. There's 3 stations I like to listen to that are actually kind of cool because they do trend and they do enterprise and they do try to play songs that are newer that are coming out of streaming. 2 stations I can think of right now, Candy 95 in Bryan, Texas, right outside of College Station, Texas, Texas A&M territory. Idaho Falls, Idaho, and Z103. That's another one. KHTZ. And I think, what is it? KNDE is Candy 95. And then WILN, Island 106, and Panama City Beach, Florida. Another station I always love. But again, that's also because they have that spring break kind of feel to it. Whatever reason. And then that market also, they have a station that's all dance. That's run by Club La Vila and Patrick Pfeffer. And again, very interesting formatted station and really cool music. And that's just a different market. And that's what they do. But again, this is where we are. No change in the mindset, the flea market mentality of corporate radio. That's what this is. And they don't know any better. Now, I've been doing this last 50 minutes with no script, just a couple little things to work off of. And that's all I needed. And I'm going to keep ranting like this in the hope that something will change. I'm hoping that somebody in the radio industry will hear this tape, will hear this recording, and put this in front. And I implore any radio programmer out there that wants to have a debate or discourse about this and wants to talk about this, tell me I'm full of crap. By all means, I want you to reach out to me. Email me, kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com, or find me on social media. I'm all over the place. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, @King of Podcasts, or my website. Lots of places to find me. Reach out. Let's talk about this. I want to know what you're learning, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to browbeat the programmers that are trying to do the right thing, because I know you guys are trying. I really know you do. Some of my radio brethren, I love and I care for, and they're such talented, smart, funny, witty people. That's the other part. And they're not allowed to do what they can do best, what they wanted to do in the first place. And they're willing to take the crap pay, the crap treatment, and they still work in the field. So I really hope that some of you out there, I don't care for what market you come from, let's talk about music. Let's talk about music on the radio. Let's talk about talk radio. Let's talk about sports radio. Let's talk about it all together. What can we do to make this medium better? I want to know. I want to hear what you're trying to do. What is the pushback from the corporate suits that are controlling all this, that are handicapping the opportunity, the ability to make a station better? Like I said, I got the chance to go and program myself. And I'm telling you, we were getting advertisers and we were doing some things on the format for a Spanish station. And I had blowback from the sales guy that I had to work off of. But again, I worked my way through it. And again, it's because I didn't make a dime on programming that station for a year. Not a dime. The guy that owns the station, he made some money off of it because I actually helped him keep the station up at a good spot to get some money coming in until he got that lease to somebody else that's now been running it for the last 2 years. Good for him. I did what I wanted to do. And man, I would still want to be able to program music. I would love to do this. And I would love to go ahead and take the streaming model and incorporate it into music radio and find a way to make it work and entertain it again. It can be done in the 2020s. I know it can. And sure, you're not going to get them listening on the FM frequency or the AM frequency, but you'll get them on a smart speaker. You'll find some way to make them listen in. And all they have to do is just ask their smart speaker to go and play it, or put it on their Bluetooth and find it on an app. You can do it. But are they going to? Well, I don't know. I got a few more things I want to bring up real quick before we go and wrap up this hour. I thought this was very interesting. A couple of things from Music Business Worldwide that came out that were very interesting. Indie labels call for an end to streaming payola as Impala unveils a 10-point plan to reform the sector. This is good for radio, for music. I'd like to go and see what they're talking about. So Impala represents many of the world's biggest independent record labels in Europe. They now have a must-read new report containing a number of suggestions in the industry they should consider for overhauling the way streaming works. So some of the highlights here is, quote, "We need to change the streaming status quo. The independent music community stands with artists, ready to help build better models for creators, consumers, services, and the environment to make the most of the promise of streaming." The 10-point plan to fix streaming is this. Number one, end safe harbors, effectively no new loopholes. Pay artists a fair contemporary digital royalty rate. Reform allocation of streaming revenue. Different services may wish to explore any or all of the following proposals when it comes to differentiation of rates. No threshold for a song to start generating revenue from streaming. Then you go along, number 4, assure there will be no reductions in royalties in exchange for enhanced plays or privileged treatment in algorithms or other features that recreate elements of payola. Agree and enable revenue enhancement mechanisms in markets where the services are failing to convert users to paid models. More vigilance by music services on unlawful activity that removes value from creators, including streaming manipulation, ad blocking, and stream ripping software. Enable search by labels, performers, producers, composers, musicians, authors, and publishers. Complete accountability and complete notice of recognition. Boost local repertoire and languages by better profiling and playlisting, and other features, as well as having track titles in more than one language or specific, and ring-fenced funding mechanisms to allow allocated to invest in new local recordings. Number 9, work collaboratively with a spectrum of labels across all markets to ensure editorial algorithm developments don't negatively affect diversity, local repertoire, and opportunities for artist discovery. And work within the recorded music sector to help assess and reduce the carbon footprint of digital music. A proposal. And, music, will they go ahead and respond to it, is the question. Next, of how much being made in music so far. Global recorded music revenues grew 7.4% to $21.6 billion in 2020 in spite of the pandemic. And by the way, I've said this before, over and over. If radio can't make money on the advertisers, make money on the music. In some cases, do something to create a revenue model where you pay back for playing for airplay spins. But make it not a payola model, not between DJs, but make it a model where, there's a merit-based system in order to get it where the record labels will pay to get certain commercials on like they used to, where they used to pay for commercials to promote an artist, and then that song would then get promoted on the radio. They used to have that. And that was actually something that was proper and professional and could be done. I can't say how many times I heard Fleetwood Mac on Sire Records or whatever it was they came from, right? Or whatever it was. And they used to have those, like Donna Summer, listen to it from Casablanca Records. And you could go, look for here it is. You can find the song for $10.99 at Corvette Records in New York and Midtown, whatever kind of stuff, right? You had that. Or you could just say, look for the song on iTunes, and you find ways for radio to go ahead and be part of the music model. Not just a secondary route to spin the music after it's already been old and tired and no longer popular, no longer the in thing. But for now, radio wants to be the flea market. And I think that's the best possible way to go ahead and make radio realize the mistakes of their ways. So putting out a title like I'm going to do tonight, Corporate Radio, why corporate radio runs on a flea market mentality. I hope it does open the ears to those out there. I hope some of you that look at this on the YouTube channel will please comment on there. I want to be able to read some of those comments back. I hope all of you will reach back out and comment about it. I want feedback on this. I hope somebody will do that. I want change for radio. I support radio. This is what I came in to do. Podcasting just became the place to go. It was a new frontier because radio was failing at the time I decided to leave, 2005. By that point, we'd gotten less is more. We'd gotten all these layoffs and all these different things going on. And I could have stayed in Clear Channel, but I didn't want to. I know I was only going to be there for a little while, get my time in there, figure out what's going to go on next. Or just, I don't know what I was going to do. But I was going to journeyman my way somewhere else in radio to keep going. But then podcasting became a thing. And God bless my bosses and my full-time for creating the ad that they did that said it was for a radio producer and it was for podcasting. And I learned about this business. And, to hear people talk about I'm going to start a new podcast. Well, I already done, tens of thousands of them, produced myself. I've hosted a lot of different, I've hosted several thousand hours of my own content. And, some people just don't get it. And it would be nice to have all those microphones and all these stations that have all this great equipment to get it used again. Get their phones, get their telos phones working again. Get the boards running. Do some magic on a Wheatstone board and get going. Get on one of those Audio Technicas or one of those EV7s or EV5s, whatever it is, and get back out there and start doing some fun stuff on the radio. It would be nice to do that again. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for listening to another Broadcasters Podcast. I hope you enjoy this commentary, and I hope all of you will feedback. Again, email me, kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Go for it. And until next week, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.